Condemnation for the Russian airstrikes in Ukraine's Odesa region. Ukrainian President Volodymr Zelenskyy has called the attack a deliberate act of terror. Emergency teams sifted through the rubble searching for survivors after Russian missiles hit several apartment blocks in the town of Serhiivka. At least 21 people were killed in the airstrikes, including a 12-year-old boy. Many residents were in bed when the missiles struck early Friday morning. President Zelenskyy used his nightly address to denounce this latest in a series of Russian attacks on civilian areas.
3
missiles on an ordinary residential building, on a 9-story block in which nobody was hiding any weapons, any military equipment or any ammunition that Russian propagandists would claim such strikes are aimed at. It was a simple building housing 160 people, ordinary people, civilians. This strike also destroyed a recreation camp, a typical camp you'd find in a seaside area. This is conscious, deliberately targeted Russian terror, and not some mistake or an accidental missile strike.
DW correspondent Nick Connolly is in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Nick, Russian missiles have struck civilian infrastructure a long way from the front line in the past few days. Kyiv, where you are, Kremenchuk and Odesa. Russia says they're not deliberately targeting civilians, but that has been invariably the outcome. What does it play here?
Well, obviously, the Ukrainians are convinced that this is, as you just heard there from President Zelenskyy, terror. This is a deliberate attempt to create panic behind the front lines, to force Ukrainians to basically put pressure on their democratically elected government to make some kind of concessions to the Russians and to end the civilian losses. I think the Russians still claim that these are all military targets, or at least nearby. It's interesting, though, that the Russian state media is kind of not paying too much attention to these, isn't trying too hard to talk about what they were supposedly targeting, trying to kind of get away from the story and change the narrative to something else. There is a sense that they are increasingly aware of how badly this is playing out internationally and how badly this is doing in terms of their perception, at least outside their borders. For the most part, though, I think the question of intention is less important. That is a question later on for the war crimes investigators. The fact is, Russia is willing to risk these civilian losses, these civilian casualties, even if they are targeting, as in the case of Odesa, they claim Ukrainian anti-aircraft systems. They are using missiles that are increasingly less precise and older. It seems like they're running out of the more modern types of rockets. Western sanctions playing a role there. Russia unable to get the kind of Western technology that it was up till recently able to use to build more precise rockets. And their strategy at a time where they're not doing particularly well in the east, where they're making small tactical but not strategic gains, is to put the heat up on the cities behind the front lines in the hope, I guess, that Ukraine loses its ability to supply its troops on the front lines and to hit morale. So Ukrainians, ordinary citizens who maybe in previous weeks thought they could get back to some kind of normality, are increasingly aware of the fact that the war is going to hit them wherever they are in this country.
And that as more advanced Western weapons, Nick, are finally landing in the hands of Ukrainian fighters. Will this better weaponry allow them to better protect civilians from these kind of attacks?
Well, that's been the big breakthrough, at least as far as Kyiv sees it, that finally there have been promises now from the US to supply anti-aircraft systems, modern and anti-air basically systems that would also be able to knock out missiles, because that's been basically Ukraine's Achilles heel throughout this. It's been able to keep Russian planes out for the most part, and when they do send missiles, they fire them while over the skies of Russia. They don't come into Ukrainian airspace for the most part because they're too scared. But getting missiles knocked out of the sky has been a major issue, and the US is now promising that those missile systems will be here in a matter of weeks rather than months. Germany had pledged a system too, but that is expected only in the autumn. I think the example of Snake Island and Russia's pretty hasty departure from there has really shown what a game changer those Western systems can make, even if they're only supplied in small numbers. We really saw Ukraine basically able to prevent Russia resupplying its troops there, and then to basically pound the island with rocket artillery systems from the Ukrainian shore rather than having to fly planes or drones over the island. So that really, in the space of a couple of weeks, really turned the tables. And the hope here is that as Western weapons come in bigger numbers, that really the same pattern is going to be played out in Donbass, in the east, where for now Ukraine has been having to take kind of controlled retreats to avoid losing lots of personnel.
DW correspondent Nick Connolly in Kyiv. Thanks so much. Well, Ukraine has asked Turkey to detain a Russian-flagged ship that Kyiv says is carrying stolen Ukrainian grain. The cargo ship Zhibek Zholy is currently anchored off the Turkish Black Sea port of Karasu. Ukraine says it sailed from the Ukrainian port of Berdyansk, which is currently under Russian control. Kyiv has accused Russia of stealing grain from Ukrainian territories occupied by Russian forces. Well, correspondent Dorian Jones joins us for more from Istanbul. Dorian, Ukraine wants Turkey to detain this Russian-flagged ship. What do we know about this ship's journey?
Well, it's unclear where this ship has come because, according to this international monitoring site that monitors all ships' transponders, this ship's transponder only was switched on when it approached Turkish waters. So it's unclear where it came from. The Ukrainian ambassador in Turkey, Vasil Bodnar, insisted it came from this Kremlin-occupied Ukrainian port of Berdyansk, where Russian officials were interviewed last month and said that they were ready to export grain from this port. It is unclear where it has come from, but Ukraine are pretty sure where it's coming from, and they want Turkish officials to stop it and to investigate and seize it. Currently, it is about 180 kilometers from Istanbul, which is where the Bosphorus Straits are, which the ship will have to pass through to get into world markets.
The Ukraine is certain of its origin. Is there, though, any likelihood that Ankara might actually seize the ship?
Well, that's very unclear. Now, Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, when was asked last month what Turkey's position is on stopping ships carrying grain, which, according to Kyiv, has been illegally stolen from their country, Çavuşoğlu said they would investigate all claims. There's been widespread accusations that even Turkey has been received in this stolen grain. Now, Turkey vehemently denies that, but Çavuşoğlu said that we would investigate all these claims, but said as of yet they haven't found any claims to support their stance. Now, there have been ongoing reports that Russia has been starting to export, according to Kyiv, stolen grain to the world markets. Syria is alleged to have received a large amount of that grain, but also a ship that was sent to Egypt. The Egyptian authorities turned it away. Now, that will be the pressure on Turkey as well, not only to turn it away or prevent it from using Turkey's Bosphorus waterway, but Ukraine look like they want this ship stolen and impounded. Now, that puts Turkey in a difficult position. It currently positions itself as a facilitator and mediator between both Kyiv and Moscow. It says it has good relations with both, but that has raised questions over Turkey's allegiances and questions of, is it giving too much from Moscow? And the whole question of grain, there's a world grain shortage. What's going to happen to this grain that is in Ukraine that Russian forces have now taken? Is now a very potentially contentious issue. Turkey says they want to facilitate and mediate a solution, as now the pressure is on Turkey to seize this ship and to impound it.
Dorian Jones in Istanbul, thank you. Now, as a result of the Russian invasion, many Ukrainian teenagers have fled to Germany. They're currently attending special classes to help them get used to life here. But after the summer holidays, some want to start in normal classes with German children, even though many are still studying their normal Ukrainian syllabus online while outside of school, acting as unofficial translators for their parents.
Music class is also an opportunity to relax a little. These children from Ukraine fled the country when war broke out. Some of them with their families, some alone. They've been attending this Berlin school for 4 months now, and they're beginning to get the hang of the German language.
Auf der linken Seite ist ein Stuhl und ein Mann.
Luckily, most of them can already speak some English. Often they have to translate for family members at government offices, or even look for accommodation, all at the age of 14.
We, with the family, have a big problem to find a flat. Yeah, it was too hard. We moved from one flat to the other, and we can't find one where we can stay a long time.
And there is a problem with the flats and also the money that no one is working because my mother doesn't know the language yet, and of course she is learning, but how she can pay for our living and other stuff like this.
A huge plus is that teacher Abeli Weselai has a social worker on hand to help. She's fully aware that the pressure on these teens is immense. The stresses they face in their private lives means many find it hard to concentrate in class.
It is definitely tough going. It's not easy for them. It would be a lie to say that their transition into the mainstream school system will be easy. It won't. But it's manageable, and we're here to support them.
Will they stay in Germany long term? The students are caught between two worlds. Mornings, German school. In the afternoons, most of them have online classes with their Ukrainian teachers. It's a busy schedule, and they don't have much spare time to get to know Germany better.
Many of the students are taking online classes as well. But unfortunately, neither system works very well. A little in German, a little in Ukrainian. They just can't learn that quickly.
The teachers here want to help the students come away with a high school qualification. Even if they leave Germany in the future, at least they can have something to take with them.